The manure dispute case. The relationship between fairness and efficiency is a topic that is often debated. People usually think of them as opposing forces. Either fairness takes precedence or efficiency does. These two concepts are seen as a zero-sum game, where one increases at the expense of the other. Whenever I hear someone say this, it reminds me of a classic case known as the Manure Case, which happened over 100 years ago. Welcome to the Economics Made Easy channel. Here, we break down economic principles in a simple and easy-to-understand way and show you how to apply these concepts in your everyday life. If you find this helpful, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to get more practical economic insights right away. This case took place in the United States on April 6, 1869. The plaintiff hired two laborers to collect horse manure from the street. They started working at 6 p.m. and continued until 8 p.m. for a total of 2 hours. During that time, they stacked 18 piles of manure. Manure was valuable, but once they piled it up, there was too much to carry, so they went back to fetch a cart. The piles of manure weren't marked. The next morning, the defendant saw the 18 piles of manure and asked a patrol officer if they belonged to anyone or if anyone had been asked to remove them. The officer said that they didn't know who the manure belonged to and hadn't instructed anyone to move it. The defendant, seeing no owner or markers, decided to take the manure and spread it on his own field. By noon, the two laborers returned with the cart. Seeing that the manure was gone, they learned that the defendant had taken it. This led to a dispute, which ultimately ended up in court. If you were the judge, who would you award the manure to? If we were being very strict, you might say the true owner of the manure is the horse that produced it, or perhaps the horse's owner. This point was actually debated in the case. Both the plaintiff and defendant agreed that the first owner of the manure was the horse as owner. However, the horse as owner had already relinquished ownership by leaving the manure on the street and walking away. So the plaintiff argued that since he had hired laborers to pile up the manure and had expended labor, the manure should belong to him. The defendant, on the other hand, argued that once the manure fell to the ground, it became part of the earth, which belonged to the public, not the plaintiff. The plaintiff had only changed the location of the manure, not its ownership. Therefore, the manure did not belong to the plaintiff. From a fairness perspective, can we say that either side is completely right? Both parties seem to have a reasonable argument. But let's think about it. This manure was accumulated through human labor, and it represents wealth. So, who should own it? More importantly, should we encourage the creation of wealth or the marking of wealth? The ownership of those 18 piles of manure is not what's most important. What truly matters is the impact of this ruling on future generations and how it would shape people's behavior. Let's set fairness aside for a moment. Imagine two villages where the same case happens, but with one difference. In the first village, the manure is awarded to the plaintiff, the one who piled it up. In the second village, the manure is awarded to the defendant, the one who saw the manure and took it. What would these two villages look like after 50 or 100 years? In the first village, by awarding the manure to the person who created wealth, the people growing up there will have an expectation that any wealth accumulated through human labor cannot be taken without permission. They'll understand that wealth has an owner, and they'll respect other people's property. In this village, people will make fewer efforts to protect their wealth because the value of that wealth is not easily taken away. People will be motivated to create and accumulate wealth. As a result, the village will thrive and improve over time. In the second village, where people can simply take anything they find unguarded, the effort to protect wealth will be so great that it will offset the value of that wealth. The people in this village will lack the motivation to create or accumulate wealth. Or if they do accumulate wealth, the effort to protect it will cancel out its value. After 50 or 100 years, one village will prosper, while the other may fade away. This is a crucial lesson. In life, we often hear people discussing what is fair. What they may not realize is that underlying this discussion is an efficiency trade-off. We can't just throw someone into prison without a fair trial, because doing so is not only unjust, it's inefficient. If we can imprison someone arbitrarily, human capital will be severely damaged, and no one will be motivated to invest in their personal growth. This is inefficient. When we say that it's wrong to take someone's property without compensation, we are essentially saying that if people are allowed to take other people's possessions without consequence, they won't be motivated to care for or accumulate their own wealth. Or they'll spend too much effort protecting their wealth, which cancels out its value. When we say a traffic offender should be held responsible, we're implying that if they were not, the roads would become chaotic, and the value of the road would disappear. Whenever we talk about fairness, what we are really discussing is whether it aligns with efficiency. Only rules that motivate people to create and accumulate wealth are fair. Only rules that allow society to thrive in the long term are fair. In other words, efficiency determines fairness. This brings us back to the original question we raised. When people debate whether fairness or efficiency is more important, those who understand economics will recognize that, in fact, fairness is rooted in efficiency, not the efficiency of an individual, but the efficiency of society's long-term development. They are intertwined.